Day with Dr. Abdul Rahman McBride. So you're going to have a break from hearing about, who is right and who is wrong. You Muslims know who's right. And I do see we have some Christians joining in here too. But tonight it's going to be a special presentation by Dr. McBride. And I hope everybody saw the advertisement that I put out earlier. And that's the question. The question is, what are you feeding your brain? A lot of you spend a lot of time on social media, a lot of time on television, looking at computer games and etc. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. McBride, and he can speak about you and your brain. Okay. Oh, they're saying welcome. They're telling me to tell you welcome.
Thank you.
We're waiting to hear this. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over now to Dr. McBride.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And I mean everyone. Today's title is What to Feed Your Brain. What we did was we added to that, though. It's literally what to feed your brain along with food. Because as human beings, we want to maintain great physical and mental function. Some of us more than others, obviously. But keeping it simple, we all vegetables and some form of protein. Now, I know there are people that have maybe a metabolic disorder or digestive issues, but most of us, the majority of us, we literally only need fruits, vegetables, and protein. My family and I, we're carnivores. We definitely our vegetables, our fruits, and lots of protein. But again, without having done any genetic testing, that's what works for literally all of us. So what you want to do is figure out, number one, the simple stuff. Figure out what you're most comfortable doing when you feel you're healthiest, not just in the sense of, oh, I feel great after I eat a donut. Well, that makes sense. Simple carbohydrate, comfort food. If you want to Google stuff up, every time you eat something, you swallow and you turn your digestive system on, you stimulate vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10. That's your parasympathetic, which ramps down your emotions. Okay, so when I talk about eating, if you don't have a disorder, if you don't have dysfunction, if everything works well, it is literally easier to eat healthy and be healthy than it is not to. So if we could, we'll just remove that argument, because you don't necessarily have to go organic. I understand the people that do, though, totally, if you can do it. But the point is fruits, vegetables, and protein. That covers darn near literally everything we need. We don't need the boxes. We don't need the bags, except for bags of apples and carrots and stuff. But we don't need the ultra processed foods. Now, let me read some stuff to you, because I'm going to quote the Quran to begin this for our Muslim audience, and for our non-Muslim audience, really enjoy what I read. There's nothing super critical in here or divisive, I don't think. So I think you'll really enjoy this. As believers in the one true creator of everything, let us start this lecture with some Quranic references to the brain and why taking care of the brain is so important. Now, the first reference I'm going to make is, Surah number 11, Hud, and we're going to look at verses 50 to 60. And in my Quran, this is page 341, but again, I've got the English translation of which I read out of. Verse 50, ayah 50. And this is Allah is talking to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and explaining things that took place before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, things he wouldn't have known about. And this surah actually references that several times, about how you're learning what you would not have known. Verse 50. And to the odd people we sent their brother Hud. He said, "O my people, worship Allah. You have no other ilah or God but him. Certainly, you do nothing but invent lies. Very important verse. Nothing but invent lies. Oh, my people, I ask of you no reward for it, the message. My reward is only from him who created me. Will you not understand? And oh, my people, ask forgiveness of your Lord and then repent to him. He will send you, he will send you from the sky abundant rain and add strength to your strength. So do not turn away as mujrimun, criminals, disbelievers in the oneness of Allah. They said, O Hud, no evidence have you brought us, and we shall not leave our gods for your mere saying, and we are not believers in you. Does this sound familiar? All that we say is that some of our gods have seized you with evil or madness. He said, I call Allah to witness and hear you and bear you witness that I am free from that which you ascribe as partners in worship. With him, Allah. So plot against me, all of you, and give me no respite. I put my trust in Allah, my Lord and your Lord. There is not a moving, living creature, but he has grasp of its forelock, and verily my Lord is on the straight path, the truth. So if you turn away, I have conveyed the message with which I was sent to you. My Lord will make another people succeed you, and you will not harm him in the least. Surely my Lord is guardian over all things. And when our commandment, and Allah in the royal we, when our commandment came, we saved Hud and those who believed with him by a mercy from us, and we saved them from a severe torment. Such were the odd, the people's names, such were the odd. They rejected the ayah, the proof, the evidence, verses, etc., of their Lord and disobeyed his messengers and followed multiple messengers and followed the command of every proud, obstinate oppressor of the truth or leader of their day. Sounds real familiar, doesn't it? Now, lies and forelock, really important. Now, if you will turn, if you want to, you can turn to chapter number 96, El-Alaq, Surah El-Alaq. And I'm going to start with verse 1, and we'll read the entire chapter. It's only 19 verses. Read in the name of your Lord who has created all that exists, has created man from a clot. And this is pre-microscope, okay? From a piece of thick coagulated blood, if we can describe it that way. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who has taught by the pen, the first person being able to write was the prophet Enoch or Idris, alayhi salam, has taught man that which he knew not. Nay, verily man does transgress all bounds in disbelief and evil deeds, because he considers himself self-sufficient. Surely unto your Lord is the return. Have you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seen him, an uncle, Abu Jahl, who prevents a slave, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he prays? He was trying to interfere with his salah and worshiping of Allah. Tell me if he, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is on the guidance of Allah or enjoins piety. Tell me if he, the disbeliever Abu Jahl, denies the truth, this Quran, and turns away. Knows he not that Allah does see what he does? Nay, if he, Abu Jahl, ceases not, we will catch him by the forelock, a lying, sinful forelock. Then let him call upon his council of helpers. We will call the guards of hell to deal with him. Nay, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not obey him, Abu Jahl. Fall prostrate and draw near to Allah. So what we have is really cool, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the lecture. Remember the lying, the sinning, and the forelock. Some scholars would say, or some descriptions describe the forelock as being the hair, of course, and your forelock, and if you grab it and you can pull and control the person. The point is, we're talking about lying, sinful forelock. Hair doesn't lie, right? So what you've got is a majority of the scholars will talk about the front of the head. And as Muslims, we expect our souls to be pulled out from the front upon our death. So think about what takes place there. That's how important, as I do functional neurology, think about how important brain and brain function is. And there we go right back to what to feed your brain along with food. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a big picture with those verses in mind. With a big picture, we're going to talk about hemisphericity. For those of you who don't know, I mean, it's a big word, but it's really the simple explanation would be your brain. If you've seen pictures, it's split down the middle. And what you have is on the right side, one hemisphere, that's going to have certain strengths. And then on the left side, left hemisphere, okay? And that has certain strengths. The ideal brain function is when both sides of the brain are running at 100% and they are working together. And that's, if you want to Google up a term, functional disconnection syndrome, there's a lot behind that. Books, the two brains, all kinds of hemisphericity. There's a real good book out there by Irish scholar Ian McGilchrist called The Master and His Emissary. Actually, it's on the shelf. If I'm out of the way, you can go through those books. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe right brain function first, then we'll talk about left brain, and then I'll give you a brief summary of the different areas of the forebrain or the forelock or the forehead, the frontal lobe, okay? So what we're going to do, and this is important because for brain trauma, we do a lot of brain trauma, brain injury, or a lot of ADHD and like I said, the disconnection syndrome stuff. If you have an injury, say you have a stroke, and you come into the office and you're going to tell me where it is, and based on this, some of this, I'm not your doctor, but some of this you may be able to apply to yourself depending on where your trauma or your stroke was, okay? So I'm going to break it down by right hemisphere, then left hemisphere, then I'll briefly cover each of the lobes and what they do. Then we'll talk about some frontal lobe, and then I'll also point out how you can feed the brain with something other than food or along with food. Now, let's go over the right brain. The right brain actually is your inhibition side. That's going to be avoidance behavior. That's going to be your stop side. The right brain is really active. Research shows the right brain is really active from conception or during development in the womb to about the age of 3, or for the first 3 years of development. So sometime during 2 years plus. The right brain controls large muscle groups. The right brain controls left body actions. So imagine if you had the stroke over here, if you see someone, what we call the easiest thing, because everyone can see it, I believe, is what we call flexion escape. So I know right away the stroke is over here on the left side somewhere. The right side, because the left side, the flexors have escaped and they're in control and they're overwhelming the extensor muscles. And we'll talk about that later. It's also important to nonverbal communication. So while we're talking, a good example of nonverbal communication would be me talking very excitedly. Now, if I'm smiling, it wouldn't be threatening. But if I'm frowning and I'm talking really excitedly, that could be determined as anger, right? So you want to decide, especially from the right side, if I walk into a room and I hear loud noises and I peek in and I see everybody fighting and I know I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to leave. I'm going to stop my going in. That's the inhibition side. But that's the nonverbal communication. That's babies watching parents' facial expressions, smiling them when they smile. That's how they learn and train themselves, even though they're not thinking about it. It also, like I said, that is once you become aware of yourself, that's also when you're in situations that helps you develop relationships with other people. Your right side is your social hemisphere side. That's the part that wants to get involved. It wants to fit into the group. It's very aware of things. It's aware. The key here is self-awareness and social awareness, because I can't very well, an example would be a human and a dog. When I'm smiling and everything's good, and if it's a real smile, that's inviting. If you get in a dog's face and you start showing your teeth, the dog doesn't know that's a smile, right? So that's the socialization part. And I understand that dogs don't like that, so I wouldn't do that. When I see the teeth, I know when a dog shows it, it's time to go. If a person shows it and we're laughing and joking, it's an invitation to be part of the group. The big emotions here are the right side is the moral compass, and the emotions are love, fear, safety for yourself and others, avoidance. Again, if it's not safe, I'm going to withdraw. There's also sadness, disgust, and shame. So sadness, and again, if we think about socialization, right side, if we think about socialization, disgust, shame, fear, all of those are hard emotions on us. So we try to avoid those because we don't want to, we also don't want to create those in other people because that would get us pushed out of the group. Right brain kids or right brain people are, like I said, self-aware. Right brain people are very aware of their appearance and very aware of what others think. Because again, it's that social aspect. Right brain, strong right brains also usually have a real cool science term. They also have a very high META cognition level. That is related to right brain self-awareness, the ability to self-judge, the ability to accurately judge your own actions and make accurate assessments of your own actions. It's self-awareness. Narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, they all lack this. And we can think of like a reelected white guy right now. No right brain comprehension at all. There's no he never assesses anything, does he? And literally a low metacognition, this leads you right into a corrupted left brain, there's too little metacognition. They will do whatever it takes to get whatever they want, and they are overconfident, inflated self-image, and no self-critique whatsoever. Back to the right brain, though. Again, the right brain has the moral compass. It may have too much metacognition. Then they become overly self-aware and too self-conscious. Believe it or not, a lot of actors and actresses, singers, a lot of entertainers have a hard time making eye contact because they're very self-aware and they think you're staring at them, you're judging. They're judging themselves harshly, so they think other people are too. So they wear sunglasses to avoid that contact because they're too self-aware and become self-critical. The right brain is non-reward driven. This is the long-term attention. And you can see this lacking in a lot of kids today. We're worried about it because this is a big thing for ADHD. What happens is if you've got a weak right brain, you can't stay focused. The left brain is short-term attention span, very focused, but very short-term. And we'll talk more about that in a sec. The right brain is long-term focused. It can see the goal. It can see paying attention until the end of class because it thinks about doing well in the class. Left brain may walk in, they'll rush into class. They may actually like learning. But what happens is after a few minutes in class, if they aren't super interested in the topic, they lose track of that long-term goal. And that long-term attention isn't there, so they can't stay on track in the short term. Boom, boom, boom. I'm looking here, I'm looking there, I'm paying attention. I'm looking for something interesting. Global attention, the big picture, very right brain. And this is a good example, a time to give you an example of the right brain. A strong right brain sets big, long-term, achievable, hopefully, long-term goals. Then a strong functioning left brain will take those goals that the right brain has set, the big picture, long-term attention, and the left brain takes those goals and starts achieving in incremental steps, the linear, the step by step, short-term focus things. I'm going to do well today in class. I'm going to do well on this exam I've got. I'm going to do, while the right brain keeps the big picture there. I want to graduate. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a Hafiz and Quran. I want to, in relationships, the big picture is stay married forever. So the little incremental steps are, be kinder to my spouse than they are to me. And then hopefully you've got a spouse that's trying to be kinder to you than you are to them. You see, so as long as the left brain and right brain are working together, there's success in this. The right brain also A weak right brain, because of that lack of focus, they have commission problems. So if you've got a right brain weakness, and that's the ADHD kids, type 1, 2, and 3, particularly types 1 and 3, I believe, the right brain weakness shows in the commission problems, meaning they cannot inhibit, they cannot delay, they are impulsive, they're hyper anticipatory, they're hyperactive. They can't delay anything. They can't hold on until the end of class to talk to their friends. They can't sit still, all that stuff. The right brain is also has a preference to reality. It likes real things. When we're training, a simple thing, pretend someone comes into your office, or pretend you want to strengthen your right brain. What you could do is take pictures of familiar faces and look at them and recognize them and name them. Your right brain loves familiar objects. Your right brain loves real things, like name that flower, name that animal. Is it a dog? Is it a cat? Is that Uncle John? Is that blah, 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 blah. It likes reality, whereas left brain likes virtual reality. If you get chronic infections, for example, remember your right brain is inhibitory. So if you get chronic infections, that might indicate an overactive right brain, and your immune system is being interfered with or stopped. It's not allowed to react as strongly as it would because your right brain is too strong and your left brain isn't telling it to go. Autoimmunity. Oh my goodness, way too much immune response. Now you've got a strong left and a very weak right. And again, we train that out and we'll talk about that later. Very interesting. Even though a strong right brain, social awareness, self-awareness, like I said, if it's too strong and the left brain isn't in there to logic down the emotion, then we have the major depressive disorders. We have feeling guilty about everything. Because, like I said, you're very self-aware, you're very self-critical, you have real high metacognition, you're very aware of others. You can put yourself in other people's shoes. You understand other people because you have a high awareness of yourself. If that gets excessive, now you're also going to be involved with fear, guilt, shame, right? And the right brain is where fear lives. And PTSD, what's really cool, like I mentioned, the right brain is in control of the left side of the body. That's also left field division. So what you could do to strengthen a right brain, I'll jump into it real quick for a second. Colors. Even if the person can't do anything else but see colors, what you can do is literally use blue, green, and indigo. Those three colors all are right brain colors. Left brain colors, on the other hand, are red, orange, and yellow. So let's talk about the left brain now. The left brain is then the approach behavior, the initiation of things, and the go side. The left brain kicks in at about 2 to 3 years old. That's the terrible twos. That's the why everything stage. With my 4 children, I think some of them are still in the terrible twos sometimes. No, the idea is that that's the why everything. The child has just spent the first 2 to 3 years of its development, his and her development. And now the left brain kicks in and starts to want to figure out and apply everything it gathered from the first 2 to 3 years. It's why everything. They want to know the details. They want to know about everything. It's motor driven. Because remember, your right brain, you've been practicing large muscle movement for 3 years. Well, you've been moving for about 3 years, right? 2 to 3 years using the right brain, large muscle group stuff. Now the left brain is even more motor driven, and it's fine detailed motor driven. Small, fine motor skills. Talking. They start developing words. Think about how hard it is and how fine the motor control has to be to coordinate the breathing, to coordinate the mouth, to coordinate the lips, to coordinate the tongue, to coordinate the facial muscles to get the words out. This is fine motor skill. If they have a hard time speaking, probably a weak left brain. This is very, very, very reward driven. This is, I want the cookie now because it tastes good. I get pleasure eating the cookie, right? The hand caught in the cookie jar. Very reward seeking. The verbal skills are off the charts. Reading and writing and math skills are also very left brain. And when I say math skills, I mean adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, very linear math, not, and this is where the child starts 1, 2, 3, grades 1, 2, and 3. They're killing it. Reading, math, they're killing it. Then we start to get into verbal comprehension questions. And that's where they start to fall behind. They start to get frustrated. They get upset. And now think about it. Their left brain, they have no, if they're strong left, they're more go than they are stop, more initiation, less inhibit. So now they get frustrated. They get angry. They have outbursts because they can't get it anymore. Because remember, the right brain has the comprehension. That understands facial expressions. That understands words. That understands jokes. That understands all of that stuff. The left brain is very linear in its understanding, very literal in its verbal descriptions. And it's also, like I said, the approach, behavior, motivation, and then the emotions are happiness and joy, anger. Those are the three emotions on the left side. And we can see it in our reelected white guy, right? He's only happy when he gets his way. Oh, I'm sorry. And surprise is there. He's only happy when he gets his way. He's really surprised when he doesn't. And then what does he do? He displays anger. It's all left brain. I mean, a reelected white guy, I mean, literally, you're looking at such a corrupted left brain dominance. It's amazing to me. I mean, literally, that's how clear it is. And what does the left brain? The right brain is social. The left brain is selfish. This also ramps up the immune system, as I mentioned before. Autoimmunity is an overactive left brain. It's attacking everything. Left brain kids are usually, children in particular, and even some adults, a majority of adults sometimes. Left brain kids and left brain adults can be very immature in the sense that they usually don't care what clothes they have on. They're just covered. The left brain, like I said, is very reward driven. It's very detail oriented, very short term attention span. If there's a reward, the left brain will keep working if the reward is obvious. If not, it looks elsewhere. And that's what our phone, our computer people are doing, the companies are doing to us right now. Very short term attention span, immediate. It's right now. The right brain likes reality. The left brain likes VR. The left brain is also very, if you know the hormone or the neurotransmitter, dopamine, and that's your addiction hormone. The right brain is very serotonin oriented, calm, joy, happiness. Although both of those hormones, both those chemicals go everywhere, but there are more receptors for each of those on those sides of the brain. The left brain is, that's why you see autism, ADHD. That's why they may be hyper focused and they get upset when you break their focus. They're not done yet. Very linear thinking. They want to see this through to the end. One of their strengths is their ability to just focus right down and narrow focus right now until I'm done. I don't want to stop this. This is also the person, if you're left brain deficit, right? Remember, the left side is the motivation side. The left side is the go side. The left side is the initiation side. A lazy child, they're more right brain. They're more big picture. They're more hashing it out. They've got the big idea, but it's also the inhibition side. I want to make sure I fit in. I don't want to initiate, because if I initiate wrong or I overstep, I may be pushed out. I may be frowned upon. I don't want to get any embarrassment, guilt, or shame out of this. So you could see, in terms of a lazy child, they might be left brain deficient. And if I was treating a child or an adult or a child with a left brain deficiency, I'm going to create left brain. I'm going to be doing left brain dominant activities. And I use a lot of laser or cold laser, class 3 laser. I use a lot of laser with my patients. Dyslexia, can't narrowly focus, flipping letters, all of that stuff. ADHD, type 1. Oh, here it is, type 1. Inattentive, distractible, left brain deficit. If there's no type 2 symptoms, impulsive, hyperactive, compulsive, that's a type 1, and that's the left brain deficient side. Type 2, now it's a right brain deficiency because now they're impulsive, hyperactive, and compulsive behavior. Type 3 is a combination of both of those. And as I mentioned earlier, autoimmunity is too stronger left brain, a very weak right brain, chronic infections, too little response, or a weak left brain and a strong right brain. And again, the colors are red, orange, and yellow to stimulate the left brain. Now, let's jump into the lobes themselves. I'm going to start with the frontal lobe. I'll leave it and come back to it. The frontal lobe, that's all the initiation and inhibition. So if we're going to be punished and pulled up through our forelocks, and if we're going to be punished lying, sinning forelocks, think about what's taking place there. Initiation, you commit the sin. Right brain, inhibition, you don't commit the sin. The parietal lobe, we've got the awareness, we've got awareness of spatial awareness, we've got the self-awareness, the awareness of others. What's really cool about the parietal lobe, and we'll talk about the temporal lobe in a sec, the parietal lobe is also tied into vision. If I can jump ahead for just a second, the occipital lobe is vision. Vision comes in and it's done, and it's pushed out to other areas of the brain to determine what's going on. When it's pushed into the parietal lobe handles the where is it vision. Something's over here, I see a movement or I hear a sound. There, I see it. There, I see it. Okay, the parietal lobe is where is it vision. So think about if you have a stroke up here, now maybe I can also, well, not maybe, I can also work on your brain by stimulating visual activities, right? Touch my finger, where is it? Okay, spatial awareness, now touch it without looking at it, right? So there are lots of things we can do. Temporal lobe, we think of that as the sound lobe. Really cool. Did you know something you can look up? FUSIFORM, fusiform gyrus. That's where, in this area, in your lower temporal lobes, that's where you have facial recognition. So again, vision. And the temporal lobe is more detailed. And that is the parietal lobe is what we call the dorsal stream. The temporal lobe then, on both sides, is called the ventral stream. The ventral stream, if the parietal lobe is where is it, the ventral stream is then what is it? So again, the vision hits the occiput, boom, it gets pushed up to the parietal lobe, where is it? And then the temporal lobe is kicking in at the same time, trying to figure out what is it? Is it safe? Should I approach? Should I approach with the left brain? Should I avoid? What is it? And that's the details. And then, like I said, the occipital lobe is there to literally record or register something in your vision. And at this point, then, like I said, when we think about treating brain dysfunction or strokes, for example, what I'll ask a patient, I'll ask them, I had a patient come in the other day, I'll start this way. Well, the other month. She comes in, she's got neck pain, lower back pain, and I happen to be taking care of her on a first visit. He comes in with what we call flexion escape or contraction, right? And then the lower body flexors are your glutes. So you see the external rotation of the leg and the foot. You have a slight bend in the knee because your hamstring muscles are considered flexion at the knee. Then you might even have the foot wanting to turn in because the calf muscles are pulling it, right? And they're bigger than the front of the calf muscles. So the posterior, the gastroc and soleus are pulling the foot, the glutes are pulling it out, and the hamstrings are bending it. So that's the flexor escape down there. Her stride was just a little bit off, but her arm was up here. And I asked her how long ago the stroke was. She told me 4 months. And she's already done with PT, but she still has this. So knowing it's a right brain, knowing it's flexor, and let me ask you a rhetorical question. This is flexion escape. meaning the flexors are working too hard. It's not extensor failure, right? And this is where we start feeding the brain. Let me read you my list. We're going to feed the brain with the senses: vision, taste, smell, touch, hearing, pressure, gravity, vibration. So I went after motor function because I know these muscles still work. They're just being overpowered by the flexors. So what I did was I said, listen, let me apologize ahead of time, but could I do something with your tricep muscle, your extensors? And it was only 4 months ago. And she's walking fairly well. So she said yes. So I said, okay. And the reason I apologize ahead of time is I take the reflex hammer and I start whacking her tricep, because the reflexes are what we call automatic. You don't usually control those or override those. And she doesn't know what I'm going to do anyway. So I apologize. I tell her I'm going to start whacking your arm, the back of your arm, and literally within a minute or so, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was only 4 months ago and some strokes are worse than others. Within a minute, her arm is literally hanging straight at her side. And that is, again, it wasn't food feeding the brain. It was feeding the brain through the senses. No contraindications there, right? So now her arm is hanging straight. I said, you know what? This is really cool. And I had a little bit extra time to cut both. So I asked her, I said, let's go into the other part of the office where we have a vibration platform. And her balance is pretty good, but we have arm rails on either side. So think about what takes place here. The reason I put her on a vibe plate, the majority of the time it works. Sometimes it's too strong a sense or a sensation, and it messes with the vestibular system or the cerebellum, and can be disruptive to balance. That's happened to me once. I said, would you mind? She said, no, not at all. I said, what you're going to do, put both hands up here. By the time we got back over there, her arm was already bending again, because that's what it's used to. So it starts bending. So I sit down at a short table right next to her, and I said, all right, I'm going to turn this on. I set it at a super low setting, and it's vibing. The reason I use the vibe plate is because I want to throw a lot of sensation at her, senses. I want to throw balance. I want to throw, like, there's what we call a vestibular ocular reflex. There's a cervical ocular reflex. Her brain is working overtime, right, to stay upright. Because even though it's only little things like this, you're going, you think you're going to fall like 1,000 times a minute this way, 1,000 times a minute that way. Your brain is kicked in and gravity is pulling you down the whole time. And I'm whacking her with my reflex hammer. Within seconds, her arm straightens out. She's thrilled. I asked her to stay on it. And I asked one of my assistants to stay with her because I had to see a couple other patients. And she literally maintained, she stayed on the vibe plate for 10 minutes. She came off the vibe plate and she said she felt so charged and so energetic in her mind, because now, in her case, alhamdulillah, it was the stimulation. It was increased in stimulation. So the brain cells demanded more oxygen. They demanded more blood flow, and they were lit up like they haven't been lit up in since the stroke. And then during her successive visits, we did more of that. She got her own reflex hammer. She had her husband and kids doing it at home. We did some mirror therapy, where as you put a mirror in between, you look at the good one, and then the mirrors, in her case, it was the left. The mirror is lying in front of the left one, so she can't see it. But I tell her to look at the mirror, because your brain sees the reflection, and it looks like your left hand. It's like going to the movies. You go to the movies, you pay all that money, and you still get scared. But you know you paid $10. You're sitting with your family and friends, and it's fake, and you still jump. Your brain can't tell a joke unless you train it to see or to what you find funny. So you trick the brain, mirror therapy. Her hand is out on one side, and you can use a TENS unit or something, light TENS unit to stimulate. But I said, okay, tell yourself you're going to move, right? Move both. Oops, I'm sorry. You're going to move both together. Your brain will see that, and it'll start to use it again. And those are just some of the things, like in her case, that's how it worked with her. But like I said, let me close out here. I'd like to give us a lot of time, at least 15 minutes or more, and you can ask questions. Feeding the brain with the senses. You have motor function, like I said, literally right there. You can start that right away. Then you've got vision. Like I said, you can feed the brain with colors. And as I mentioned earlier, the right brain is blue, green, indigo. Left brain is red, orange, and yellow. You've got sound. Sound crosses over. So if I want to stimulate my right brain, I put the sound in my left ear. If I'm going to stimulate my left brain, I put the sound in my right ear. You can take out your ear pods, and if it's a left brain trauma, a left brain stroke, listen to the Quran through the right ear. Piece of cake. You also have smell. That's the one sensation that doesn't cross over. So you take if you wanted to isolate it this much, the left brain likes pleasant smells, right? Initiation, go, pleasure, pursue rewards. The right brain, and those nostrils stay on the same side of the brain. This is ipsilateral. All the other senses cross. The smell stays the same. And the right brain then likes or notices more unpleasant smells. So what you can do is put it, the brothers can put it in the beard. Sisters, you could put anything right on that side of the nostril. You could put it on the clothing on that side. We can do that a lot in the office, put it on child's clothing. With oils, be very careful about putting them on yourself because they may, some of the ingredients in some of these may irritate the skin. But you can use, like I said, motor function, vision, sound, smell. You can also use taste, use touch. If I want to stimulate a right brain problem, and I want to strengthen the right brain, I can actually, while you're talking to your child, your spouse, yourself, do something on the left side of the body. Stimulate the left side of the body to cross over to stimulate the right side of the brain. And the same the other way. And vibration, like I said, I use a lot of Vibe platform for my stroke patients, if they can take it. Temperature, that's also a sensation. So you could literally cold, hot, determining if both of those temperatures are safe, the opposite side brain is going to jump at a change in temperature on whatever side you're trying to stimulate. So again, if you want to write this down, feeding the brain with the senses, motor function, vision, sound, smell, taste, touch, vibration, and temperature. And what I'd like to do before we take questions, if I could remind you, Surah Hud 11:50, and to Ad we sent their brother Hud. He said, "O my people, you have no other ilah, God, but him. Certainly you do nothing but invent lies." 11:56, I put my trust in Allah, my Lord and your Lord. There is not a moving, living creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. Verily, my Lord is on the straight path. 57, so if you turn away, still I have conveyed the message with which I was sent to you. My Lord will make another people succeed you, and you will not harm him in the least. Surely my Lord is guardian over all things. And then El-Alaq 96:13, tell me if he, the disbeliever, turns away. No, he knows he not that Allah does see what he does. Nay, if he ceases not, we will catch him by his forelock, a lying, sinning forelock. Then let him call upon his counsel. We will call upon our guards of hell and to deal with him. Nay, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do not obey him, Abu Jahl. Fall prostrate and draw near to Allah. Now, remember, the frontal cortex has 5 subcortical areas, and I'll give you a brief description as we close the lecture part before we answer questions. There are 5, what we call 5 subcortical areas. You've got the motor unit of the frontal lobe. You've got motor, premotor, supplementary motor. These are they coordinate, they help coordinate with cerebellum and other areas. They are in charge of very complex movements. Number 2, or the second area, is Brodmann area number 8, the frontal eye field. This controls eye movement and focused attention. which goes along with eye movement. Wherever we are looking, we are going to pay attention to. And as Muslims, we're told all the time, lower your gaze. Don't be looking at, don't be looking. Don't let my mother hear that. Don't look at haram, because now you're paying attention to haram or bad stuff. Third area, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This is so important, along with the others. This is thinking, this is cognition, this is math, this is language skills, this is communication. All of our complex thinking, executive functions of planning, organization, and goal setting. Remember, long-term goals, short-term goals. Working together, you achieve it all. This dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, huge for that. Now you also have the orbital frontal cortex. This involved with the amygdala and some, what I'll mention in a second, the anterior cingulate. This is the orbital frontal cortex, is the emotional regulation and social behavior. And the fifth, not the least, the anterior cingulate cortex, motivation. And again, the left would be motivation to do it. Think about it. If they're working well together for motivation, for example, if I am going to get something done, I want to be motivated to do it, but at the same time, in a balanced brain, my right side, I want that to inhibit my motivation to walk away and do something else. Does that make sense? So the right brain and left brain working together for motivation. Now I have the motivation to get it done, and I'm inhibiting all the other motivations. Now, think about it. If you're a right brain dominant, you're going to be inhibiting all motivation. If you're left brain dominant, man, you can't sit still. You're so focused. You're going to do it no matter what, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but you're going to do it. That's why they have to work together. And then you want to inhibit the bad stuff and motivate yourself towards the good. Alhamdulillah. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Especially, like I said, how to, if any of the audience has strokes, type in a couple questions. Remember, I'm not your doctor, but I can give you examples of what we do in the office.
Hey, we have a question here. One of the ladies here on what is this, Telegram? She says her children, all of her children are gifted with the ability to play musical instruments. Does that mean that one side of their brain is more active than the others?
Usually. What you have is the easiest way to determine that is, for example, with this, if you have a child that picks up, and I see them all the time. They have shows about kids. The kid can play the piano. Another child can sing. They can hit the perfect pitch with no instruction. It happens literally. Hit the tuning fork and tell me what note that is. I'm tone deaf, so whatever side, they're both probably not functioning. But if they can sing and hit perfect pitch, boom, here's a C, here's a D, here's an F, boom, 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 and they can hit that note also, that is usually a super, super strong left brain. The issue with just being musically, instrumentally gifted, you could look at a strong right brain in terms of they pick up melody, they pick up tones, they can play instruments based on sound, and then if they've got a strong enough left brain, then they move into reading notes. If any of you know anything about musicians, I think everybody knows who Stevie Wonder is. This guy has been blind from the beginning. From the beginning, he never learned how to read notes. But he has written one of the biggest names in the musical industry of anyone. So here's a blind guy that hasn't developed the ability to read. Lionel Richie. I saw an interview one time, and Lionel said, my aunt, my music teacher, used to almost want to kill me because I wouldn't play off the sheet she was trying to teach me, I'd literally just be playing the keys based on the sound that it made. Another guy that's known for writing that love song stuff. So if they just pick it up and go, we've got to determine. Now you would do left brain, right brain testing because they may have a strong right brain. That's usually songwriters, but that's also melody, tone of music. They just get the sounds on how to create emotions, right? So they may be good with that. They could be a left brain, which tends to be more like the classical music, these old European writers, Bach, Beethoven. Jazz musicians are usually very strong left because they can pick up the timing of the music. So it's hard for me to answer that question whether they're right or left. They may just have a super strong interest and they pursued it and they loved it, but it's hard to tell without further testing because of how the brain is working. And one side they might be more one than the other, or maybe they're blessed and gifted with both sides. That's where we want everybody, right?
Okay, there's another question here. This sister says, I had a stroke a few years ago and they have me work and I have to exercise on a regular basis.
Yes.
She said, why is it that they always tell me, like when I'm working my left leg, to you work the right hand? They always say that by you working the opposite hand to the leg, it's helping the brain. How does that help the brain?
It may be that I'm a fan favorite of working, like I said, the same when I mentioned the arm thing. I like working the same limb on the opposite side because whenever you work, if I'm working, it's an estimation. If I'm telling my right arm to do something, right, then some of that leaks over to the left, even though it's not moving. That's how mirror therapy works. In their case, I'm going to guess at that because I prefer same limb. What happens is if they're trying to train, was it the left leg that's bad and it's a good right arm?
She's typed more here. She says whatever they'll have her do both the same side at first.
Right.
Then they'll tell her now opposite. She said, and she never understands why they'll say opposite to work your brain.
Yes.
They'll tell her we're going to do opposite to work your brain. She said, what does that mean? What are they doing to her brain?
Absolutely. I'm guessing that they're probably really good because if this is their reason, think about what they're doing. If you're doing a left leg and pretend that's the problem leg, that's the stroke side, they are actually having you integrate the left leg is right brain injury, right? So the left brain is 100%. So now they're having you work and integrate both sides of your brain. And rather than being the same limb, they are actually asking your brain to work extra hard and pay attention to something that isn't usually tied across unless you're walking. Think about it, right? I mean, that's probably what they're tying in when they're talking about leg to arm, leg to arm. That's how we walk. So if you're doing your left leg, do the right arm at the same time. You're picking the left toes up, move the right wrist and tie it. They're integrating both sides I'm guessing they're integrating both sides of the brain, which is a great idea. I think that's really smart.
Okay, another lady here, another sister. This is a sister. She said she's been caring for her father since he had his stroke. He's gotten a lot better in the past 2 years, but she said she notices that he still has a problem with his memory. She says, will their memory ever come back?
That's what we have to do there. Let's think about what I don't know is where the stroke is. With that in mind, I'm a big fan of, Imam Ibrahim can tell you, I'm a big fan of using red light therapy. I love cold laser. I use cold laser, but the LED lights work also. I can't recommend any companies because you know, you can go on Amazon and there's like a gazillion pages of red light therapies. I don't know. I can't recommend any of those devices, but the idea is I know where a lot of the research is on light therapy. Sister, if you know where your father's stroke was, then, and all of you, and this is for everyone, if you want to improve, red light works, even the LED red light. I have panels, bought them for my kids. I bought one for my mother. That company I can recommend, Platinum LED, LED. You want lights that are somewhere in the range of over 600 nanometers up into the 800s, even 900 nanometer. That's where most of the research has been done for the power required to be successful in treating a patient. If your father, and for anyone, even if you never had a stroke, you just want to improve brain function, I use a lot of light, red light and infrared light. The contraindications, though, are cancer and pregnancy. You don't want to stimulate that. You don't want to stimulate a cancer cell, and you don't want to get a baby growing out of cycle, okay? So no pregnancies, no cancers. But the red light between, say, in the 600s, I think most of the devices run 660 up to 880. I like into the 900s. And what you do is you light up that area of the brain. Wherever the stroke was, light that area up. And then I would actually recommend, particularly since your memory centers are like right in the middle, in here where your hippocampus is, you can stimulate the hippocampus by having the light right there and right through the middle. Smell is a great stimulation for memory. Get your father's favorite smells. Challenge him with, tell me if this is coffee or peanut butter. Start with easy stuff and then grow out into, is this peppermint or spearmint? Is this plain mint? Is this a pine tree, or is this a something else smell? Is this a orange or a lemon smell? The more smell, your smell centers, really cool. Your smell centers are right there where your memory centers are. The Parkinson's Foundation, the Alzheimer's Foundation, all these dementia things and Parkinson's organizations are now saying that if you want to see about your dementia, pretend you're worried about it, you've got family members, whatever the case, smell is the first indication of potential dementia. If you have lost your sense of smell, you've got about a 10-year window before your diagnosis of dementia. So imagine if you keep your smell, and believe you me, I test my sense of smell all the time, and it's still there. I test my sense of smell because that research has been confirmed over and over and over again.